All right, folks, how is everybody? I hope everyone is doing well. We're having a slight technical difficulty, starting me off about a minute late here, and I'm trying to fix it, but separate of that, and more importantly, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed with your host, Michael Vosk, the Dragon of the Southern Tier. I'm happy to be here with you today. We're having a slight problem with one of our devices. Literally just blew up. I don't know why. And that's a bit annoying. But you know what? We're going to try and keep going no matter what and try and make this happen for you. There's a lot that we're going to talk about today. A lot that's happening. And in fact, we're going to be getting a response shortly. We're going to be getting a live update on what's happening with the back the blue that is going on nearby in our region. And there's a lot to do with that. In fact, I want to mention to you all that there's been a lot of developments that happened since about 2 o'clock in the morning today, August 16th, that changed the very way that we're going to do this show today, how we're going to be presenting some of the information. And I'm going to go over that in detail very shortly. And in about 10 minutes, we're going to be having the live update on what's going on with Back the Blue. So for those who are not aware about it, right now there is a Back the Blue event. It is the Broome County Back the Blue Drive, where they're going to be driving through several cities in the county of Broome County in New York State. Over 217 people have stated that they're going to be going. 675 people have mentioned that they were interested. And in fact, and I want to get this update for you, we have a preview of what was happening just before it actually started. And I'm going to show you that right now. So this is in, I believe it's Endicott, New York, or Vestal, New York. And as you can see, there are hundreds of people. Actually, excuse me, it's in the Broome County SUNY Broome campus. And there are hundreds of people who are coming out to support the local law enforcement in Broome County. And they have a lot to say. So I want to definitely thank people who are going out to that event. Many of them are not going to be on the show because they're at the event instead. And I thank each and every one of the people who are there. It is a big deal. And we're going to be talking about what's going on with Black Lives Matters. We're going to be talking about what's going on in our community and how this is affecting us, not just in the southern tier of New York, but across the entire nation. As always, you are welcome to call in at 607-242-1582. You are free to send us a text at Facebook or on YouTube at the No Soundbites Allowed and let us know your thoughts. Now, again, in about 8 minutes, we're going to have a call coming in live from the Back the Blue Drive telling us about that event. So just be aware, we're going to get a call shortly. So until then, there has been a lot that has been said about what's going on throughout our nation. In particular, in Portland, we've seen 80 days of protests that have been going on. Even though people like Representative Nadler has denied that there are any protests in America, that there is no such thing as Antifa, we're seeing night after night after night that this is in fact true. KGW8 is reporting about this. 80 nights of protests and violence and riots. We know that in New York City, just reported by the New York Post, 4 people were killed. 11 people were wounded overnight on August 15th because defunding the police. 600 police officers were taken off the job, taken off of their duties, and the public were left undefended or less defended than they were. And we see that the count over 276 increased shootings, over 176 increased deaths or victims of shootings in New York City alone. And you know, I have to believe that part of this is because Cannon Hinnant, this is a 5-year-old boy. He was killed. 5-year-old boy. And we know that he was killed for no reason whatsoever, through no fault of his own. What fault could a 5-year-old have that would cause another individual to walk up and shoot them in the back of the head? There is no excuse for this. There is no way to call this anything but outrageous, insane, depraved. It's sad. And you know what's really sad about that? It took over a week of the news media to being inundated from social media, from the public talking about this, before the major news media a week later to come out and actually cover this. They started covering this on August 14th. That young man was killed on August 8th. And this is in North Carolina. But we hear constantly, this doesn't exist. There is no violence there. You're just wrong. We've heard about the killing of Jessica Dottie Whitaker, who was killed for saying all lives matter. We've heard about the 16-year-old and the 14-year-old that were killed at the Seattle Chaz. We heard about the 8-year-old who was killed in Atlanta because their parents drove in the wrong place because Black Lives Matters didn't want or wanted to have their own autonomous zone and killed their child. I have to believe that when we're seeing violence across the nation, in Portland, in Austin, in Seattle, in New York City, Chicago, North Carolina, Atlanta, when we're seeing this over and over again, and we see that the same individuals that are responsible for this tend to be the individuals who are aligned with Black Lives Matters and Antifa, we have a problem. And we have a problem that needs to be addressed. But you know what? You don't see that, because if you look up Democrats denounce Cannon Hinnant death, you will not find a single response. Black Lives Matters is a political organization. They are part of the Democratic Party. The Democrats especially should be standing up and denouncing these acts of absolute violence, these vile actions by these rogue individuals, this splinter group of their party. And yet we have yet to hear a single statement, a single comment, a single denouncement of this senseless violence. And you know, the whole nation came together. The whole nation came together when George Floyd died. And everyone was willing to say, you know what, that was wrong. No one should die in that way. We all universally agreed. Can we not all universally... What, the audio is bad? No, I'm sorry about that. Thank you, Ron, for letting me know. I'll try and fix it. Is that a little better? Okay, we're trying to fix the audio. Like I said, just before the show started, had a bunch of technical issues that hit. Hopefully that improved it. Ron, let me know that it's a little bit better. So, oh, I know it. There, that should fix it a little bit. But we know that the nation can come together and can denounce evil, acts of evil and violence and wrongdoing. We did it with George Floyd. Why can we not do it with Cannon Hinnant? George Floyd died and was used as a political tool to advance the goals and agenda of a socialist organization called Black Lives Matters. We know it's socialist because that's what their leaders have said. We know that their leaders have said in Chicago, as an example, that looting and violence are fine to advance their goals. They will do anything that they can. And yet, we cannot hear in our nation the same kind of outcry, the outrage, the anger that says that this is wrong, that a 5-year-old should not be killed for no reason whatsoever. Because a black man shot the white child. Is that really where America has come to? Is that really what we're thinking about now? I want that to sit in your mind. A 5-year-old was killed senselessly, and not one elected Democrat anywhere in the nation is willing to say that that was horrible, that that was terrible, that that should not have happened. Not a single one. What is going on in our nation? How could they not say that? How can they not react to that? Well, there's a lot of things that are happening in our nation. And again, we're going to get to a few things. And I know the internet is messing with our system right now, and we're having dropped frames. I don't know why. It's always interesting that sometimes when the most controversial topics come up, the system just messes with us. And I'm going to try and fix it live as we're going so that we can make this better for you folks. But I want you to understand that there is no way that we as a nation can survive if we are not unified on these issues. You know, we have to be. We have to be. Hang on. Hello, I believe this is the call that I had been expecting. This is Michael. You're on No Soundbites Allowed.
Hey, Mike.
Hello. I'm with you. I can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you.
All right, I'm over at the Back to Blue rally from ECC to Glenwood Park. Talk about a lot of people showing up. And I'm also very impressed with the support that we're getting from people on the sidewalks and as well as just regular residents that are waving flags, waving at us. It's awesome.
Okay, so that people understand who I'm speaking to. What's your first name?
This is Mike. I'm sorry.
All right. And Mike, so you are in the drive to support the law enforcement in Broome County. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I believe we showed some video prior to the start of the event at 2 o'clock. It looked like a couple hundred people. How many people would you say are participating in this event right now?
Oh my God, 100 is an understatement. There's got to be over 1,000 people here. There really does. I mean, there's Jeeps here, there's classic cars here, there are hundreds of motorcycles here. It's awesome.
So there are people with motorcycles, there's people with Jeeps.
Classic cars, you name it, they're here. And I even heard bagpipers in the background. That whole parking lot over at in front of the new science building was full of people getting ready to go on this parade. It was amazing.
Okay, so it's been quite the event so far.
Yes, it has.
And I had spoken with one of the organizers of the event, and she had mentioned to me that police authorities were there as part of the event. They are leading the event. They're making sure that everyone is safe and that there is no interruption. Is that correct?
That is correct. I've seen multiple police officers, including police auxiliary, blocking intersections so we can go through without a problem. We also have a police escort out in front as well. Every once in a while, I can see him. If he goes up onto a hill, there's just so many cars here.
Okay. Can you tell me, is there any protest? Are we seeing Antifa, Black Lives Matters, plot? Are they out counter-protesting?
I've only seen one person screaming out Black Lives Matter so far. That's it. And we're almost to Glenwood Park now, so that's all the way down. We came down Prospect, down Front Street, down Main Street, and that's the only person I've seen so far.
Okay. Can you tell me, do you know if there is anything that is at the end of the event after the drive. Are you aware of anyone, if they're having any kind of speech or any conversation?
There's been a lot of conversations. I haven't seen any kind of speech or speakers yet. Perhaps there may be some at Glenwood Park, but that's it. And another thing I want to know, too, is the amount of flags and banners that are all over these cars is amazing. It's just so nice to see this kind of support for our law enforcement.
It is an amazing difference from what we saw on Tuesday.
You're not kidding.
And it's also very different than what we saw on Bainbridge yesterday,
Yes.
where members, it is alleged, members of Black Lives Matter attacked a elderly man.
Yes, I heard. I spoke with one member that was actually there, Matt, and he said the person that was attacked was disabled and older, which is disgusting.
I have seen that as well, and I see that in the reporting by Fox 40 News, someone had responded from being there that a disabled 86th Airborne veteran and a local business owner was attacked because he said the words Trump 2020.
Yep.
Which is
That's what I
incredibly
heard.
sad. Which is incredibly
That is
sad.
sad. Well, we have no free speech any longer unless we're speaking about the narrative.
Yeah,
It's just sad.
which is very sad. So tell me, in the event that's going on right now today, have people been speaking about the nature of what's going on with Black Lives Matters? Are they talking about law enforcement? What have been some of the conversations you have had about this?
Conversations I've had so far, people are very supportive, and they talk about supporting law enforcement, and they're disgusted with what's going on right now, with all the protests that are going on. They're just simply disgusted. I mean, these are the people that, when you call 911, they're the ones that are supposed to respond to you, and they're supposed to help you, and these people want them gone. These protesters want them gone altogether, so it's horrible.
Yeah, part of the defunding the police effort that is espoused by Black Lives Matters, Antifa, and progressive leaders of tomorrow.
That is correct.
Are you driving as we speak?
No, I'm actually out of my car. We just got to our destination point, and I'm literally looking at, and you mentioned 100 earlier today. I think I'm looking at 200 motorcycles as I'm just parked here with people in support of the police.
Over 200. Okay, you're counting somewhere in that. So there's hundreds, literally hundreds of motorcycles, vehicles, people that are out supporting. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah. Right now, this parking lot is full at Glenwood Park, and there are people piling in right now in support of law enforcement.
Okay.
I bet I would say, as it's saying, okay, here comes the last cars in now, and I would say the convoy coming in here was probably about 2 miles long.
2 miles. Wow, that is incredible, and that's a beautiful statement of
Yes.
people who support our law enforcement, who disagree with having it defunded. I know you're there at the event, and you can definitely call back. I want to make sure that you get to enjoy the activities there. Is there anything else you would want to say live to people who are listening right now?
The only thing I want to say now is support our boys in blue, because they put their lives on the line every day for us. So if there's any speakers, I'll be sure to record them and send them to you.
Absolutely. We look forward to that, and we thank you for that.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Mike.
All right. Yep. Thank you for having me on. All right. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, folks. So as we had mentioned before, you can, of course, call, and this is we were just having a conversation with the gentleman identified as Mike, who is part of the event, the Back the Blue Drive in Broome County, that went through several cities and is a celebration of our law enforcement. It's an important thing, especially when we see at this time in our nation where so much is not being told to the public. Things like the killing of Cannon Hinnant where we see that the news media had absolutely no interest in telling the true story, in letting the public be aware and notified about what's going on. That's terrifying. Or when we see several stories that are minimized. Let me jump into a slightly different subject I want to get to. There was a major issue I want to get to at the end of this, though. But, we heard back on July 22nd, the Broome County Executive, Jason Garnar, came out on July 22nd and said that the Broome County will go bankrupt. There's just no money left. That they're out of money and they don't know what to do. And they were begging for federal aid, as you can see in this article from WBNG. As I mentioned on, it was July 23rd, I was very sad, and you'll see descriptions in the YouTube video description, links to everything I'm putting up here. We made it very clear for people, you're not going to see any benefit. You're not going to get federal help.
But someone saw that and they were speaking with me. They said, Mike, but it's going to be okay because the federal government is going to step in. They're going to save us. I mean, that is what their job is. That's what I was told by this individual who happened to be an independent and was just asking that question of me. And I had to say, no, the federal government isn't. No, because it's not their job, because they're not.
And so, let me explain.
The campaign has been powered by the people.
Oops, sorry. Sorry, not intentional. So, let me explain what you just saw there. We see that a government is taking actions, like with COVID-19, with our finances, and forcing the public into an unacceptable situation. They're bankrupting our counties. They're bankrupting our cities. They're allowing violence and violent individuals to control our cities, to control the narrative of what's going on in our government. And they're passing around this idea that, don't worry, you're going to be okay, because government's going to take care of you. And when I said that, no, that's not going to happen, I was very much correct. Congress closed down. We saw that the House of Representatives stopped discussions about funding for counties, for individuals, for unemployment, for businesses. They stopped that on August 2nd. They're gone. They're not coming back until September. Government is not coming to save you because that's not their job. And the fact that there's only 2 counties that actually are at this moment declared to be going bankrupt means the government's absolutely not going to go into that. And I explained that in the prior video. But the news media isn't paying attention to this. They're not telling you about this. And they're not telling you about the issues that matter because there seems to be an agenda. An agenda that says that they want to deny that there are riots that are going on for 80 days in a row. They want to deny the fact that there are killings, hundreds and hundreds of shootings and killings and people being wounded because of the decisions of government to fall in line with a group of radicals. Black Lives Matter. Plot, Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, and individuals that demand compliance or else. And I'm getting to that or else. And I do want to make that clear. They are very clear about that. So, and we see this at every level of our government. Because remember, back in 2018, it was actually October of 2018, that I first mentioned that we're going to see Kamala Harris as the vice president. That Democrats have gone completely to the far left. That they are not looking to actually help people. They're out there to help their image. That they're going to have Kamala Harris as the vice president because she's a woman of color, not because she's qualified. And I went into that to some extent at one point, and I want to play that for you as well, back on December 3rd of 2019.
In some respects, you can say that's our nation. Our nation is our mother. Not in the sense of our parents, but it takes care of us. It helps us grow. It nurtures us. It gives us freedom, the freedom to be able to become what we want to be. And as we succeed, our nation succeeds. So in a way, it's kind of like a mother. And Kamala Harris disrespects that. The Democratic candidates disrespect that. The goal of socialism is to completely disrespect and remove freedom.
So I said that back on December 3rd of 2019. I stand by it. I see no reason why that's not still as correct today as it was back in December, as much as it was in October of 2018. Shawshine Johnson says, "Hey, sweetie, do you have a very weird vibration when you're talking?" As I thank you for bringing that up. Just before we went live, the entire system crashed. And so that's why I'm using my backup camera right now. My audio is not coming across properly, and I do apologize for that. I'm trying to fix it as we go. It was either delay actually coming on live or not being able to do the show on time. So I'm trying to make the best of this, and I thank you for making me aware. I'm trying to adjust it as we go. If you're seeing that it's still affecting the audio quality, please let me know about that. But we're trying. And I think it's important that the show must go on. Difficulties with technology, issues with how this is being broadcast because we're seeing problems today. And it's really weird. I have the major issues. The systems are being affected only when I talk about the big issues. I don't know what it is, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, I don't know. The internet overlords seem to always want to mess with some of the biggest issues. So I apologize for that. Let me jump forward to something that's really important. A lot of people may have noticed that on Tuesday of this week, no worries, thank you for letting me know. On Tuesday, and by the way, folks, you can comment at any point. You don't have to agree with me. You can tell me, Mike, you got it wrong. You can say, Mike, I disagree. You don't understand. Let me explain. Please, call in. Call in. But I want to tell you why the show got changed up, and maybe that was what the last minute changes may have affected the system. But let me explain why I'm so upset. See, last night, well, actually, let me start. On August 11th, there was a Back the Blue event in Binghamton, New York. And that event was invaded by none other than BLM. And at that event, I believe I have video of it. I know I have video of it. I was talking about it on WNBF.
We invited them to peaceably assemble to be able to make their statement with their signs. That was fine. When they walked up the boom box and started to blare that in my ear and that of other speakers, when they decided to start playing cornhole and other games in front of us, obstructing the news media from being able to see it, when they started to surround and intimidate both me and the news media from being able to give interviews on why we were there, yeah, that's no longer peaceably assembly. That's a disruption. That's intimidation. And I have to tell you that in my personal opinion, I believe this is motivated by fear.
So, on Tuesday, August 11th, there was a small Back the Blue rally, which I was one of the speakers at and one of the co-creators of. And as you can see, Black Lives Matter use intimidation and try to instill fear in us and actively try to assault us with sound to prevent us from being able to speak. These are the same people that on Saturday, yesterday, were out amongst the public, and they were demanding that they had to be heard and that no one else could be able to stop their voice from being heard. That's what they said yesterday in Bainbridge, New York. But in Binghamton, New York, as I just showed you in the video, they were happy to silence any and every other voice. Well, as bad as that was, as much as they have done things such as you can see here, where we saw Messiah Andrews, one of the leaders of Black Lives Matter, he recently was out and about, and he was telling me that he was using racial slurs. As you can see here on the screen, this is his alternative name on Facebook, as he says, "Shut up." And I won't say the word, but you sound it out, yeah, that's a racial slur. These individuals went one step further yesterday. And just so you can see it a little bit better, because I want you to understand, and they're coming for me. This is from my campaign page, and not everyone agrees with me, and that's okay. Not everyone will vote for me. That's okay. But it's not okay when individuals who publicly go onto a public format, so I'm not doxing anyone. This gentleman, Al Toth, came out and publicly said that he, apparently as part of Black Lives Matter, is going to come out and try to threaten me with physical violence. You know, when an organization has to live by fear, when they can't stand that other people have a different opinion, when they resort to violence, especially against those who are the most at risk. They've attacked, allegedly, we've seen that their members have attacked an elderly man in the Binghamton, Broome County area. They, yesterday in Bainbridge, are alleged to have attacked a 68-year-old man who is disabled. They're now threatening to use physical violence against me and to try and scare people away from an election campaign because someone dares say, "Hey, I like my police. I think that defunding the police is a bad idea." You know, when we have to face that in America, that's a problem. Not if they wanted to peaceably assemble, to go out and say for themselves, "Hey, here's our sign. We disagree with the police. We want to defund the police." You can do that. If you want to say that vanilla ice cream is better than Rocky Road, you can do that. Protest all you want. But these aren't protests when violence is being introduced, where we're seeing that they are using racial slurs and that they are using threats of violence to try and intimidate people, to make people scared so that they can get their way, so that they can advance their political agenda. I will not stand for that. I will not back down from that. I will not allow that to happen. And as we can see, and as we have just heard, hundreds of people throughout our community are actively resisting that they are supporting our police. They are supporting our law enforcement. They are supporting our community because they are not afraid. Whoops, I'm not showing anything I want to show you. Excuse me. Because they are not afraid, because they are not going to bow down to some radical organization. Because threats of violence do not make you safer, do not make our nation safer. You know, I know today's been a little chaotic. And the fact that the system is crashing, the audio is not as good as it normally is, I apologize. Since 2 o'clock in the morning, I've been dealing with the anger that has come from Black Lives Matter, threatening my life. I've had to notify friends and family to be on the lookout for members of Black Lives Matter, members of Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, members of Antifa that would seek to do harm to them and their property and to me. Not because I will back down, I will not, but because these individuals have so little, they have no argument. Their only argument is back down or else we will use violence against you. And you know what I'm waiting for? Where are the Democrats in Broome County? And we see this across the country. Where are the Democrats saying that they reject this violence? Where are, and in this picture, you'll see noted going left to right, that's County Executive Jason Garnar, who is still begging the federal government to pay for his bad planning economically and bankrupting Broome County. We see Assemblywoman Donna Lapardo, the fourth most powerful person in the New York State Assembly, which is controlled by Democrats, and that is responsible for things like the criminal justice reform that has allowed criminals to be put back onto our streets to endanger our people. And we see that there is legislator Bob Wessler, who is my opponent in a race for legislator, and I'm not using this as a campaign thing. I'm saying that where is your outrage? Where is your denouncement of the violence of these individuals trying to silence every other voice? Why are Democrats not willing to say anything? I'll even go as far as, this is Representative Anthony Brindisi. Mr. Brindisi, where is your statement, Congressman Brindisi, saying that in your district, in your community, the people you represent do not bow down to threat of violence? That having people who are silencing the First Amendment is unacceptable in our communities. Where are you? Why are you saying nothing about this? Why are they ignoring this just as much as our media has ignored the death of Cannon Hinnant? Why does it require us to go to social media to force these individuals to actually make a very simple statement that they do not agree with anyone who would silence the First Amendment rights of citizens, that they do not agree with intimidation and fear tactics, and that no one should interfere with an election because of their feelings or that they have a different political view, and they should never threaten anyone? Is this too much to ask for? I don't know. Maybe County Executive Jason Garnar is afraid that if he says something that is against Antifa, that is against Black Lives Matter, that is against the violence, the threat that they are now currently putting out there, that maybe Representative Brindisi will not back him in trying to make sure that he gets the federal funding that he wants. I hope that's not the reason. Maybe it's that we see that some of these Democrats are terrified and afraid of the violence of Black Lives Matter being turned against them. I don't know. But I can tell you this: we will never end the violence that is coming from individuals in Black Lives Matters, the threats that they are putting out there, the racial slurs that they are using against people. We're never going to see that end if we do not stand up to that and say we do not accept that in our communities. We don't accept that in Portland, New York. We don't accept that in New York City. We don't accept that in North Carolina. We don't accept that in America. We will stand up to people who are violent and cruel and evil and manipulative and using emotion and just terroristic tactics to try and silence people, to bully people into doing what they want. That is not what America is about. That is not what we stand for. And I am so happy to see that hundreds of Americans are out right now and they are lining up. They are celebrating their First Amendment right without any violence and saying they believe something. And they can do that without taking away anyone else's right to say whatever that they want. They're not taking away anyone's right from saying that we can improve America. They're out there saying that we can work together with those people who are protecting us to make America better. You know what? This I actually support. This I believe in. This is what I think America is all about. But I definitely can tell you that America is not about individuals like what we saw on Tuesday over at Black Lives, where Black Lives Matters is going out and they are using intimidation tactics to silence the members of the press and to try and oppress individuals who are simply saying an idea. And if we don't stand up to that, we cannot expect, I don't care what community you're in. If you are telling me right now that you believe, well, this isn't happening in my community, it's not going to bother me at all. Yes, it will. Because they are coming after you too. Binghamton is a town of 40,000 people. Broome County has 190,000 people. It's not on the map for most people. Most people don't even know where upstate New York is. And it's happening here. It's happening in Portland. It's happening in Austin, Texas. It's happening in Nashville. It's happening in Asheville, North Carolina. It's happening to you. It happened in Bainbridge, New York, just a day ago. Do you think Black Lives Matter, that progressive leaders of tomorrow, the fringe, radical, violent members of the Democratic Party are going to stop just because you're not in the big cities? Don't believe that. They're coming there. Their threats are not threats just against me, not just against an election campaign that I happen to be in. They are making threats against you, against your life, your livelihood, your ability to live free. And if you disagree with them, and God forbid you happen to be black and conservative and black and Republican, then they are willing to go to any ends necessary, including to use violence, apparently, to try and make their point. Am I aggravated about that? Absolutely I am. Yes, I wanted to talk about the violence in Portland. Yes, I wanted to talk about the fact that we have counties across America that are starting to run out of money and that there is no federal help for that. Yes, I wanted to talk about Cannon Hinnant and the fact that it's deplorable that he died, that it is insulting to his life and his memory, the innocent 5-year-old, to say that the news media had to be forced to actually mention his death, that Democrats are so fearful of this fringe group of their party that they're unwilling to denounce the violence that happened to a 5-year-old. A 5-year-old. And that there is so much going on in our nation that people are terrified to speak up. And we've seen poll after poll that has said that there is, 60% of America that is afraid to speak up. That 80% of America, including black Americans, want to see police in their neighborhoods to protect them. And yet we're being held hostage. And it is destroying our economies. It is destroying our communities. You know what? I'm not afraid of that. I will stand up to that. I do back our police officers, our law enforcement. You know what? In my community, law enforcement, since they've had body cams, for a couple of years now, they've had body cams. And every single accusation of police brutality and abuse of power, every single time that body cam is reviewed with the person making the complaint, it has been found that there is no proof, zero, that individuals like Black Lives Matter are using the anger, the emotion against the police to try and create a scenario that doesn't exist. Our police in Broome County, our law enforcement officials have done some of the best jobs in the entire state. Why wouldn't we celebrate that? That's good for black people. That's good for white people. That's good for Latinos. That's good for Asians. Why wouldn't we celebrate that? And yet, I get racial slurs thrown at me. I get threats of violence being put against me, apparently from individuals in Black Lives Matters and Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, to try and intimidate me and to put fear in me. And I reject that. You reject that. And that is because we are unified in America under the Constitution with our rights, the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the 10th Amendment, to say, no, you do not get to force me to believe what you want to believe. That isn't how it works. That's not how we make our communities better. I know the volume, I can hear it in my ear set. There's a vibration there. It's not coming across perfectly. This isn't the way I wanted to speak about this. But this is the way it is. And we need to speak up about this. Now, again, you can call it 607-242-1582. You can tell me you disagree. You can send in a text either at 607-242-1582 or on Facebook or on YouTube and say, Mike, I disagree. You can call in and say you agree. You can say that you have a different point of view. Maybe there's something about this that I have missed. And no, I didn't forget that Yale was just found to be racist. That Yale has been engaging in racist policies against whites, against Asians. And that's the thing, Asians, that's something that's not being talked about in the news. You keep hearing them say, well, oh my God, you can't be racist against white people. Apparently, yes, you can. Yale has done it. And more importantly, they're being racist against Asians as well, a minority group in America. Did I want to talk about that more? Absolutely, I did. But last night at 2 a.m, I was threatened because they want to silence me, because they are terrified of what we are watching right now, a conversation. Their fear forces them to try and silence any voice, and that is unacceptable. That is not what America is about. And if that is what they believe is their ideal, if this is the idea of socialism that they want to instill across America, is this the type of freedom that they want to have, where you will do as they say, and if not, you will be assaulted both physically and mentally? I do not believe America believes in that. I do not believe that the people of America, white, black, Latino, I don't care what you are. You're Christian, you're Jewish, you're Hindu, you're Buddhist. I don't believe there is a group of people in America that would agree with that, besides a fringe, radical group of democratic socialists who go by the names of Black Lives Matter, that go by the names of Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, that go by the names of Antifa. And they are a very, very fringe group indeed. I have a comment. Logan says, out of curiosity, do you think the public's opinion of Kamala Harris will change with time? A lot of polls seem to indicate her being viewed favorably after Biden's selected her. Well, I'm glad to bring that up. Because I've talked about Kamala Harris before. As I was shown before. Kamala Harris, oops, hang on a second. Nope, that's not the one I wanted. Bear with me 1 second. There it is. So this is Michael, and you're talking on No Soundbites Allowed. Whom am I speaking with?
Hey, this is Mike Woodward again.
Hey, Mike. How you doing?
Hey, how are you, Mike? Hey, I just want to let you know the rally just ended. There's an estimated 300 showed up.
I'm sorry, you said 300?
Everything else.
300, you said 300 people showed up?
No, 300 motorcycles alone.
300 motorcycles alone. Okay.
Yep, alone, not including cars and everything else. But the thing I called you about is, at the end, a bunch of Black Lives Matter protesters did actually show up, exactly 4 of them, and all the bikers got around them, very similar to what they did to us last week, and they rubbed their motors and their Harleys and drowned their voices right out.
Well,
You could not. They had loudspeakers. You couldn't hear a thing.
well, that's good and bad. It's good and bad. And by the way, Logan, I know you sent in a text. I'm going to answer your message in 1 second. But it's good and bad. I mean, I understand. Good for the goose, good for the gander. It's a way of showing them that, yeah, when you try to silence people, when you try to force people to not be able to speak, when you're using loudspeakers, you know what? If someone does it to you, you're going to hate that. And that's not American. But I understand where they're meant to. Go ahead.
I also want to add, though, there were two people all the way in the back, and we got word that protesters were coming, and there was two of them there, and they didn't do anything until over half the people left the rally. That's when they started using their loudspeakers and everything else. Prior to that, they were very quiet, just stood by their cars and didn't do anything.
So, again, they're trying to use the numbers in their advantage, trying to use when people are off guard to try and take advantage of it. And that's sad. That's sad. But I am very happy to hear that over 300 motorcycles, several hundred cars were involved. A 2 mile long procession stood up for our police and stood up against the kind of oppression that is being promoted by Black Lives Matter, by Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, by Antifa, because America is better than that. And I am happy to hear that. Did anyone speak at the event, by the way?
No, there were no speakers. There was a motorcycle group that brought some pizza and water for everybody, but that was about it. There were no speakers. Don brought the town of Owego supervisor showed up, and Claudia Tenney was there as well.
Don Castellucci and Claudia Tenney. Okay. Claudia Tenney being a candidate for Congress for the New York 22nd District.
Yeah.
Okay. Did any Democrats show up at the event?
I didn't see any.
Okay. So no prominent elected candidates or even elected officials in the Democratic Party showed up at the event.
That is correct. I didn't see any.
Okay. Well, it's
If
good.
they were there, I didn't see them.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair. They may have been there and just haven't been seen. But we'll find out.
Yes.
All right. I thank you for that, Mike. Thank you for the update. And I'm glad to hear about the event being great. And do send me photos so I can put that out for the public.
All right, sounds good. I just put some more on my Facebook. I'll send them to you as soon as I get them.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, bye.
So that was an update about the Back to Blue event that went in Broome County, driving a procession of 2 miles long with 300 motorcycles and several hundred cars going out and supporting our police and our law enforcement in opposition to in opposition to Black Lives Matter and Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow and their violent tactics. Logan, I want to answer your question. So Logan, you said Kamala Harris, who I have spoken about before on this program. I've been following her, including went back in October when I first brought up my prediction that she would be a vice presidential candidate, which you can look up for yourself. Do I think the public opinion will change? No. No, I don't. I believe the opinion of the public is essentially the same thing all the way through. Kamala Harris was rejected by Democrats. Only 5% of Democrats in the primaries had any interest in Kamala Harris whatsoever. And that was at her peak. 5%. She was not a leader at any point amongst the Democrats who were running for the 2020 presidential nomination. They rejected her wholesale. The only reason that Kamala Harris is the vice presidential candidate is because she is a woman and a woman of color. And that's because Democrats believe that if they present a woman and a woman of color, that their Democratic rank and file members are going to go, well, we vote for that. It checks a box, and they're going to go, that's it, that's great, good enough for us. It has nothing to do with her policies, which are anti-Second Amendment, which happen to be very socialist, and they're supporting things like Black Lives Matter. So do I think that that's going to improve? No. What's to improve? Democrats already rejected her. The Democrats who are the most likely to vote, Democrats who come out for the primaries, only 5% of them ever looked at her as anything worthwhile to have in the executive office. Why would we think that she's better? Because Joe Biden is such an abysmal candidate. He is an individual who can't make us. He can't have a speech at this moment without people being lost on what he's talking about. And that's supposed to make her, by comparison, is she better than that? Kind of. Does that mean she's good enough to be in the White House? No. Now, you can tell me, Mike, I disagree. I think she's a fantastic candidate. No, I don't think she is. Is she a fantastic senator? No, I don't think so. Was she a good prosecutor? Debatable in California. But the people of California don't think so. They're upset with her. So in saying that I don't agree with her, I'm just saying what Democrats have already said. Now, if you think I'm wrong, again, you can call in, just like we just had Mike call in about the Blue Lives Matters, the Back to Blue event. And you can tell me that you disagree. You can type in on Facebook, on YouTube. You can say, Mike, I disagree, and I think she's a great candidate. I'd love to hear why she's a great candidate. Besides the fact that she is a woman, besides the fact that she's a person of color, what makes her a good candidate? Because she believes that you can use the executive orders, the power of the presidency and government to take away people's property. She has said that. It is a fact. She stated that within the first 100 days of her being in the executive branch, that she would use the power of executive orders to remove people's ability to own firearms, to completely destroy and disband the Second Amendment. She said that. That is a fact. That's authoritarian. Democrats don't agree with that. Democrats said she's not presidential. And I would say even further, that means she's not vice presidential, especially when we have a presidential candidate in Joe Biden, where everyone is pretty much sure that he is not going to make it all 4 years with his full mental faculties in question at this moment. She is not the candidate. So do I think, Logan, again, to answer your question, my opinion of her is very low. To answer your question, do I think that she's going to be viewed favorably? No, I don't. I understand that there are establishment Democrats who have changed the tune. Look at what Democrats have said before she got the VP pick, and just 3 months ago, what they said about her. 4 months ago, what they said about her. They said she wasn't qualified, that she wasn't good enough. And the only reason why she's good enough today is because she's now the vice presidential pick. She's a woman and she's a person of color. And so she clicks enough boxes and they want to win the presidency. So that's good enough. You know what? If your standards are that low, I feel bad. I think rank and file Democrats are far better than what they're being represented by in government at this time. What the presidential nominees are do not reflect the rank and file Democrats that I speak to on a regular basis. They're better people than that. They deserve better representation in the presidential race and on all races, I believe. But, there are Democrats who will say they disagree with me. There are even Democrats who will say that they wish to threaten me, or that they would use racial slurs against me. And again, Roderick Douglas is the alternative name for Messiah Andrews, the gentleman that you saw in the video with his speaker in my ear, intimidating the press, because that interview I had did not make it to being reported because they couldn't be heard. So yeah, I don't think that that's going to be something positive. And I think it's for the very same reason that I'm upset with some local Democrats. I think people are upset with Democrats across the country, in Portland, in Seattle, in New York City, de Blasio, Governor Cuomo. Why are people upset with these local Democrats? Why are they upset with these federal Democrats, like Anthony Brindisi? Because they're not representing the people. They're representing a fringe organization that is going to use violence. And I don't think that is a winning strategy. I don't think that's a good separative strategy throughout the election. I don't think that's good for America. I think it's one of the worst things we could possibly do. And I am upset by that. Not because I'm a Republican, but because Democrats and the American people deserve better. I've never seen an election cycle that I'm aware of before where people were actively going out and using violence and the threat of violence to try and manipulate elections and have the parties involved say nothing, to remain absolutely silent. I would love to hear from any of the local Democrats in my county, in my community, in central and southern tier New York, say why they did this. Hello, this is Michael, and you're on No Soundbites Allowed. With whom am I speaking?
Jason from Bennington.
Hi, Jason. I know my voice is got a little vibrato in it, and I apologize, but how are you doing today? What's going on?
Yeah, not too bad. You just want to make some comments on some of the stuff that was going on.
Sure.
Well, one of the things I wanted to make an observation of the protesters, that joined you up on the, they were standing behind you while you were speaking the other day on Tuesday there. And just an observation of mine is that it almost seemed, it appeared to me that they are so cookie cutter that they couldn't really adapt to who was actually speaking. I mean, the optics of it was to the point where you're just like, you got to be kidding me. I mean, do they realize, what the individual is that's speaking, that they're standing behind? I mean, you had an individual that identified, and I was reading the sign there, and it says Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter, and more important than white feelings. And I'm just like, and the entire crowd behind you, to a given point, was all white individuals telling you, what to do about Black lives. And I'm just like, wow, And like I said, it's just a matter of these protesters are cookie cutter, and they actually do not know how to respond to you because they're not used to that. They're used to silencing individuals who don't push back, and apparently, that is not what they're adapted to deal with.
Well, that's because they're trained. These are individuals who have been trained. In the video that I showed, and I have video of this, and we have a live stream of this happening live on Tuesday. And exactly how bad it was can be seen by any individual. You can go onto our YouTube or our Facebook and see this for yourself. At one point, I even mentioned, if Black Lives Matter, what about my Black life? What about my Black voice? Why does it not count? So it's not about Black lives, because it's not all Black lives. It's not about David Dorn who was killed. It's not about the 8-year-old that was killed in Atlanta. No. It's certain Black lives. This is about politics. It's about the political viewpoints some people have. And they were trying to drown me out. And I said, what about my Black life? Doesn't it matter? Doesn't my Black voice matter? And the answer that I got back was, I was called a racial slur, and I was told that I'm not Black. Who are they to determine that for me? Who are they to tell my mother, my father, the world, I'm not Black? Because I don't politically agree with them, because I'm in the wrong political party from their point of view. They don't get to make that decision. That's not America. That is authoritarianism. That is intimidation. That is violence. But it is definitely not American. And I think that hypocrisy makes a very clear point. So I agree with you. It aggravated me then. It's aggravated me now. And there are going to be consequences for their actions, which I'll be talking about next week. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting, though, because it's like, the thing is that the bottom line is that, and as I said many times right from the beginning of all this, is that it's a socialist Marxist. These individuals, I mean, from just your appearance alone and the way that they were conducting themselves, besides for, a few of the very, Obviously you've got a few very key violent thugs within the group, but the rest of them appeared to be somebody who came directly from the Bennington University's sociology major, who all had studied critical theory and critical race theory and have learned everything there is to know about rules of radicals. And they had tried to, and like I said, they literally took it out of the textbook and tried to apply it to a black man. And you just, anybody just staring is like, you're like, guys, you might want to go back to the drawing board here and rewrite your argument, because it's hilarious, And then meanwhile, you're in a political contest against a white man, and he's now put in a position where he has to either, well, he can actually do what Joe Biden does and just hide in the basement, which appears to be the game plan. And honestly, logically, at this point, if I was him, I definitely would not come out of the basement, because I don't know how.
I think he should. I got to say, I've got to tell people, and let me be very clear, because I want to be very fair to him, or more fair than I should be even. Yes, I'm in a legislator's race. The gentleman on the far right on the screen right now, that's Bob Wessler. That's my opponent. He's made no comments throughout this election cycle, but I do not believe that Bob Wessler would advocate the violence and the threats of violence that have come against me. I would like to believe that. I'm guessing. He has yet to make a single statement, and I ask him, I demand of him that for the public, he needs to come out and say, yes, that he does support BLM, as he's done on his Facebook page before he hit it, and he needs to say, does he or does he not support threats and violence against American citizens, whether or not they happen to be running an election. He needs to make that very clear. I think, and I would like to believe, he would not advocate that, but he has yet to say anything, and I hope he will make that statement very clear soon. And I don't want to talk about the election, but I'm trying to be the nicest I can about this situation. But go ahead.
Yeah, it just it troubles me to some degree, because I see who he tends now to be, surrounding himself by, or even trying to raise money with. You've got the radical groups like or individuals even within our city council, Angela Riley. And I just think about some of the rhetoric and just the ideas that come from these individuals, because what they would do, they'd see this radical group of individuals going up behind you to shut you down, and then turning around and kind of making the same, interpretation as saying, well, just like back in the time when we were fighting the Taliban, people would go and point and go, well, they're freedom fighters, And so they justify this violent, behavior, and saying that, and they turn around and being you're oppressing them, in a way. And the question is that, where does, and it really comes back, where does Bob stand in that? What is he for it? Is he against it? And I don't believe that, honestly. There's not a place that he can actually stand at this point, because I know what would happen. The radical groups that are involved within our city, if he took a stance and all of a sudden said that he wasn't for defunding and defeat, the police, or he had to be put in a position to somehow articulate his point of view, it's just not going to work out either way. Because the thing is that if he even rolls back a little, I mean, they'd slam him harder than I think, he could handle what you'd be giving him.
But we should absolutely do that. He should do that. There is no reason why anyone, especially whether you're a Democrat, progressive, libertarian, it doesn't matter. There is no reason why people cannot say that the killing of a 5-year-old like Cannon Hinnant, the 8-year-old in Atlanta, the 24-year-old mom in Indianapolis, the 16 and 14-year-old kids in Seattle. There is absolutely no reason why we cannot denounce that, why we cannot denounce the 80 nights of riots in Portland, the hundreds of people who have been shot and or who have been at least shot in New York City. There is absolutely no reason why we cannot say that these things are unacceptable, that we disagree with that. And you don't have to be a Democrat or a Republican or conservative to say that. You just need to be a human being. You just need to be an American and say, hey, this is wrong. Stop that. This is not helping us. Criminal justice reform has been proven, according to Governor Cuomo himself. 13% of those people who have been released through criminal justice reform have gone out and committed additional crimes. What else do we need to make us understand that these are not positive things for our community or for individuals, and we need to stand up against that? I don't know why it's so difficult for that to happen. I just don't understand it. I really just don't understand it.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you look at this Marxist ideology and a lot of the ways that they're pushing their agenda and how they're doing it, I mean, like I said, I think that their techniques and tactics, work far less against they really don't work against you as they do with other, politicians, running for the same office. I mean, the big thing is that identity politics and tearing people, apart and silencing them, getting them to question, second guess of whether or not, or to actually get them to buy in on their intersectionality hierarchy to just a degree, it puts a lot of politicians on their heels, And one thing I've observed with you and the way that things are kind of running out, that's not able to happen to you, and so you're basically able to take a stronger stand on these positions than which I even see, other local politicians being able to do at this point.
Well, it's because regardless of anything else, and by the way, I want to be very clear. By the way, if you saw Gatorade, they don't endorse me. I just want people to know that that's not some kind of endorsement. But if they had just stood behind me with their signs, which they were invited to do, to stand silently and have their signs, because I respect and believe in the First Amendment, and I would support them on that. And if they want to do that silently, fine. Matter of fact, we might have even allowed them to speak, but that's not what they did. What they did is destroy the First Amendment. What they did is they attacked and they tried to harm and to instill fear. And you know what? Yeah, I'll stand on the front lines along anyone else and say, I reject that, and that is not American. I do not believe in that. I do not. And I am more than willing to stand up, and if I lose an election because of it, I don't care. Let me say that very clear and full screen. If I were to lose an election because I'm standing up for the First Amendment, for our freedoms and our rights, I don't care. I'd rather stand for the Constitution and our community than to bow down to the threats and violence of a fringe group of people who do not represent the community. And maybe other politicians won't say that. Maybe other politicians don't believe that. Maybe they are far, far more reliant and desperate to be reelected. But I am not. And that's just how I stand by that.
Yeah. And, I totally support that. And I see, and the thing is that what you're doing actually, too, is you're actually opening up an opportunity for more people to actually get into the political, realm and to run for office. Because the thing is that a lot of people don't want to actually have to deal with these radical groups,
I understand that.
They don't, and so when you stand toe to toe against them, and like literally you're opening the way, for a lot of other individuals now to potentially get into the ring, in the future by doing what you're doing.
Well, I hope so. I want people to get involved. I want people to express their opinion. I don't have to agree with the opinion. I don't have to believe they're right. This is America. They can express their views without committing crimes. And by the way, for people who are wondering, on Tuesday alone, we're talking about crimes like, according to New York State, menacing in the second degree, reckless indifference and endangerment in the second degree. It's a hate crime. Rioting in the second degree, unlawful assembly, disorderly conduct. We're talking about aggravated harassment. And that's without going into election law and the violation of that. So, yeah, there are problems here. And like I said, this is not something that stops right here. There will be further developments about this next week. People are going to hear about what the consequences of this are, because no politician should back down to violent thugs. And I describe them as violent thugs not because of their political affiliation, but because of their actions. And I think that's very clear. I don't know. Maybe that's how I feel about that.
No, it's absolutely what needs to be done. And like I said, we just need more individuals, to stand up. And, and the Democrats themselves, they have to take a stronger stance as well, too. Because at some point they have to actually see what direction our country is going into. A lot of these liberals used to be, come from a place of, free speech, and really opening up. But now they've turned into, to almost embrace this, whole new, redefining hate speech to silence other individuals, and I can't see, even, current Democrats actually being full on board for that. I feel that
then why won't they speak up? Then why won't they speak up?
I think they are just scared to death, And the thing is, though, is a scared to death politician in those positions is worthless to the people that they actually were put into office by, because you have to be willing to fight, for our freedoms, to preserve our First Amendment right. And if they can't do that, then they've got to go. If Bob Wessler can't stand up against plot and he doesn't agree with them, whether he does or he doesn't, he can't stay in the basement, because the thing is that by doing so, everybody else is losing their First Amendment right.
Well, that's a big problem. And I have to say that, appeasement has never worked. We have never seen at any time in our history where when we appease aggressors, when we appease people who are willing to use violence and violent tactics, we have never seen that result in a positive outcome anywhere in the history of the world, to my knowledge. And if there is someone who knows a case where that is not true, please do let me know. But I don't care if you're talking about the American Indians, the Germans, the Jews. You can go anywhere in time. I have never heard of appeasement resulting in a positive outcome at the end of the day. So we need to stand up. We need to stand up. You want to believe something politically fantastic? I'm not saying you can't. This is a forum where I'm saying you can call in, you can text, you can write and say whatever you believe. But the moment you cross the line and you decide that you need to use violent tactics where you allow people to have 80 nights of riots, and let's call it what it is, 80 nights of rioting, where we see massive shootings and murders at unprecedented levels because people are trying to appease these radical groups by saying, oh, well, we'll defund the police. You know what? That appeasement hasn't made a single person in America safer, and I would argue they have made them less safe. This is the wrong direction. And I think you'll find that with Kamala Harris as well. And that doesn't help us in getting counties funded or bringing in business and bringing in tax revenues when people are looking at this kind of action and saying, I don't want to live somewhere where people are running around and they're using violence to try and get what they want. I don't think that's attractive. That doesn't help people stay in that community and help that community grow. That's a great way to destroy that community, in my opinion.
Yeah, can I, double down on what you're saying there? One of the things is that you said get their way, and that is truly what their objective is, to get their way. And the thing is that they can't get their way in a regular election because people won't vote for their ideas. They can't get their way in a lot of using the current system that we have, because a lot of their ways are contrary to the Constitution of the United States. And so when people go say, well, these people, all they're doing, they're protesting so they can be heard. No, they are protesting so they can get their way. There is a difference between being heard and enforcing your way, and they don't want to live up to the Constitution. They simply want to tear it down. And that's like, and that never, I mean, with any of the protests that in the past, people really wanted more of the Constitution to be fulfilled, not, for everybody. These individuals, they want to completely wipe it out.
Yeah, and it's a sad thing. And if they think that threatening me is somehow going to stop me from moving forward, it ain't going to happen. If they think they can silence this program, it ain't going to happen. And if they were, if they really had an argument, they'd be on the show right now, calling in or typing in and saying, hey, you're wrong, and let me explain why. But they don't have an argument other than, here's our emotions, we don't like you, and we want to threaten you. That's apparently all they got. That's the best that they can put forward. And you know what? That's not American. And I don't think America's going to react to that. I don't think they're going to get what they want at the end of the day. At least as long as Americans come up, stand up, and say, hey, we don't accept that. Like they did today in the Back to Blue rally, driving through Broome County, saying, no, we support our police, we support our community, and making our community better together peacefully. There's a big difference there. I do want to give people we got about 10 more minutes in the show. I want to give them a chance to possibly call in if they want. Was there anything else, Jason?
Nope, that's about it.
All right, and thank you. And by the way, thank you for persevering. I know the first couple of minutes there were some technical issues, so I thank you for sticking with us through this.
Have a good one.
All right, thank you, Jason. So like I said, folks, there's about 10 more minutes that are left here, and you can call in like Logan did. You can type in, and if there's a different subject you want to talk about, something that I haven't addressed or haven't addressed fully, please let me know. If you disagree, let me know. If you made it this far into the show, you have an opinion, share it. It's okay. No one's going to hold you against you. I'm not going to attack anyone for saying, hey, they agree or they disagree. I want to hear what you have to say. If I'm misunderstanding why Black Lives Matters needs to go around intimidating me and the news media as they have, and there's a reason why that's okay, if there's a justification for that, hey, I'm willing to hear what that is. Please let me know, because I don't think there is a justification for that. But I'm willing to hear it. We're in a very difficult time in America. And there's consequences to all of the things that we're seeing happening. When you defund the police, as we have seen city after city trying to do, we've seen what the results are over and over and over again. When we have an environment where we are promoting the outright hate of people who are a different color, we've seen the victims pile up higher and higher, of every race, of every creed and color and religion. And we've seen the economic impact of this bankrupting communities. There is, in my opinion, absolutely no positive outcome from any of this. And that's why we need to stand up to it. That's why I'm willing to talk about it. That's why I'm willing to put my face up front. And they want to come up and they want to go and threaten me with violence and saying you're coming after me. Go for it. I'm not backing down. I will not back down, because I believe in America. And I am not afraid, and I will never be afraid. Mind you, fear, not being afraid, doesn't mean I'm invulnerable. But it does mean I'm going to stand up anyway. Logan mentions, as a last question of the day, will anything positive come from Black Lives Matters, BLM? And that's a good question, by the way. And I think the answer is no. I do not believe something positive comes from BLM. Because there's nothing being put forward. There's nothing positive in it. Black Lives Matters, from the moment that it came into existence, into the general public's knowledge, they were created for one purpose: to sow disharmony, to separate our nation by racial division, and they have been against the police from day one. This is all they have done. Remember back in Dallas with the shootings of police officers that they were promoting? They've always been about violence. They've been about violent change and violent tactics. I do not see that being beneficial at the end of the day. What is the one positive thing that BLM is about? They say they're there for black voices and for black people. Okay, then let me ask BLM a very simple, very direct question. If you're there for black people, why is it that black on black crime takes the life of about 6,500 people per year? And I do not see Black Lives Matters walking down some of the worst neighborhoods in Chicago or any other community and saying, stop the black on black violence. Let's get rid of drugs in our community. Let's actually have fathers and mothers in our families and having whole family units, because it is the express opinion of Black Lives Matters, their creators and leaders, that say that they want more single families. They want less police. They want more, and by extension, more drugs, more violence, more gangs. That's the extension and reaction to what they do. So when they tell me they want to be all about, they're there for black lives, and they selectively choose which black lives matter to them, only certain black lives matter to them, only certain black voices matter to them, and they are racist in the way that they divide individuals, that if you are not for them, then they have no problem using racial slurs to attack you. They have no problem with threats of violence to attack you. That's not an organization that is actually trying to do anything positive. That is an organization that has a secret political goal. This is a secret organization. Let's not forget that. They're a secret group of people with a secret agenda that is seeking political power for their personal benefit, not for the public. You want to improve the community? Fantastic. We can sit down, we can have that conversation. And I will be right there beside you saying, let's have that conversation with all elected leaders and see how we can make this country better for everyone. But when you tell me that you want to use violence, that you want to use intimidation and fear and silence people and deny them their First Amendment right, well, guess what? No, I don't agree with that. That's not trying to make things better. That's you trying to take control. And I disagree with that. They have no positive message. And the fact that the news media and politicians aren't being honest about that is one of the biggest problems that America is having to deal with right now. So Logan, I hope that answers your question, because I believe there is nothing positive about this movement, not because of the statement, yes, Black Lives Matter. All lives matter. I have no problem saying either of those things, but the organization and the tactics that are being used are not the same thing. Jason from Bing responds, they want to implement a communist government they think would be best for black people, like Somalia. You know what? I have yet to see a communist government around the world that has worked or is beneficial to the people. Look at China, look at Russia, look at North Korea, look at Cuba, look at Venezuela. There isn't a single communist, socialist nation in the world, in the history of the world, that has actually been beneficial. And I am more than willing to ask any of these college students, any of these college professors, please show me the actual socialist or communist country that has ever prospered and whose people are better off for it. Because historically, it doesn't exist. It's that simple, folks. It doesn't exist. They've got a promise of rainbows and unicorns, and at the end of the day, the only thing that you get are skulls. Look at China. Look at Russia. Look at North Korea, Cuba. Venezuela. Name the socialist country in the world. I will show you a place that is dealing with poverty and violence against its own people. Every time. Somalia, as another example. Yeah. Everywhere. I don't know, folks. So, one, let me again say, I thank everyone who put up with the technical issues at the very beginning of this show. It happens sometimes. That's what happens when you have a live program. Sometimes there are technical issues, and we seek to improve, and most weeks that is not the case, but this week it was. And our cameras malfunction, so it happens. We're always seeking to improve it, fix it, make it better. Maybe you agreed with us today. Maybe you didn't. Hopefully you may subscribe. Maybe you won't. I guarantee you, Facebook, YouTube, Google, they're not going to promote this. If anything, they're trying to shadow ban us and not let people hear about this because they don't want you to have a discussion. I think you should. Whether you agree or not, you should be able to have your voice heard. I've always said that on this program. I always will say this on this program. But I hope that what I've had to go through in the last couple of days, and I am not done, and the consequences of what are going to happen because of this, I hope it helps people who don't want to have their voice heard. They don't want to be public, that they are afraid that these individuals will come to attack them next. Hopefully it helps you to do that a little bit more to protect your own community by voting, by electing officials that are going to do the job of standing up for you, of being leaders, to being upfront and open with you and standing by our Constitution, our freedoms, and our rights. Because that's what will stop the violence that we see in New York City, the violence we see in Portland, the violence that has led to the death of a 5-year-old, an 8-year-old, 16-year-old, 19-year-old, a mother of 24, mother who's 24 years of age, across this country, violence like we've never seen before. Yeah. How do we stop that? We stand up to the bullies. We stand up to the violent criminals. And I don't care if they want to use race as their shield. It doesn't work. At the end of the day, you're still responsible for what you do and the consequences of your actions. That's it. And you can't use race to say, well, I'm not responsible. It's okay. That's not. Well, with that, and the system freaking out again, because it seems the internet overlords don't like this, and they're giving me lots of problems today with the feed. I'm going to leave it at that. I think we spoke for about an hour and a half, and I thank you all for joining me for this. Hopefully you'll be back next week, Sunday, 2:30, and you'll join us, and your voice will always be welcome on this program. Keep an eye out this week in the southern tier of New York. There will be additional news coming out about the consequences of what's happened this week, and hopefully that will help make the community better. But I look forward to talking to you all again very soon. I hope everyone will be safe. And don't worry, I don't back down, and I am not afraid. I will be okay. I'll talk to you all again very soon. Thank you, folks.